Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. The Lakers fell 134 to 128 in their first game without Luka Doncic and Austin Reaves to the Dallas Mavericks, dropping to 50 and 28. They are now tied with Denver in the standings for the number 3 seed, though they remain at number 3 due to owning the head-to-head tiebreaker against Denver. But I think at this point, Denver has the inside track for number 3 based on how both teams are currently playing, or at least how the Lakers will be playing with the current situation, and especially if OKC locks up the number 1 seed early next week and OKC and San Antonio both rest their guys against Denver. I had the Lakers going 2-3 down the stretch of the season here after the Austin Reaves news. This was one of the games I had them winning. I had them beating Dallas and Utah. Losing this one, to me, puts a 1-4 finish to the season in play. I think they could beat Golden State or Phoenix, but I think they will be underdogs in both of those matchups. I think they will beat Utah, and I think they will lose to OKC. So I think at a minimum, I mean, they're going 1-1 against Utah and OKC, and then we'll see how things fare against Golden State and Phoenix. But if they don't go at least 2-3, if not 3-2, they are going to fall into the 4-5. And the positive with that is they could be playing Houston, or likely would be playing Houston, which I think gives them a better chance to extend the series and give Luka, who will now be receiving treatment in Europe, an opportunity to return at some point in the mid to late portion of the first round. But it also sets up a possibility of facing OKC in round 2, or a likelihood of facing OKC in round 2, at which point I think the Lakers season would quickly end. So it's like, do you want the easier first round matchup or the easier second round matchup? There's no great answer for the Lakers right now, but they drop, I would say it was a spirited performance for the group. They scored 128 points, which was more than I thought they were going to score based on losing half of their offensive production. If you look at the collective points that Luka and Austin were both contributing over the course of the season, it was roughly half of LA's offense. So to lose that and to still drop 128, I thought that was encouraging. The flip side was the defense was a train wreck tonight, and the reinforcements aren't really coming. Like, Marcus Smart will be back at some point before the playoffs, most likely, and that will help a lot on that end. But we just saw the lack of depth right now, and LA starting guys that probably shouldn't be starting, or playing guys in the rotation that probably shouldn't be playing in the rotation for a playoff team. And they're just in a really tough spot going into the end of the season. But shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to the chat. Happy Easter to those who celebrate. Let's get into it. So Buha's big picture is first impressions of the new look Lakers. I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I am going to naturally lead into the notable performers, so we could also combine them just like the last game. But going into this, for those who watched my stream yesterday on the Austin Reaves news and LA's path to success without Austin and Luka, one of the things I noted is they had a plus 7.4 net differential with LeBron on and Austin and Luka off. And so a quick overview of the numbers: 117.2 offensive rating in 815 possessions. So pretty big sample size. That 117 offensive rating, 65th percentile across the league. They also had a 109.8 defensive rating, which is in the 89th percentile. So essentially, with LeBron on and Luka and Austin off, the Lakers have been good on both sides of the ball. They've been elite defensively, and they've been slightly above average to solid offensively. Now, the context with that is that most of those minutes and possessions have been against bench groups, and the LeBron-led bench groups, LeBron and the Banshees, some of those bigger lineups with like DeAndre Ayton, Drew Timme, Jared Vanderbilt, Marcus Smart, or some of the other lineups with like Jake LaRavia, Jared Vanderbilt, Marcus Smart. Jackson Hayes, like some form of multiple energy defensive guys that are rotating, scrambling, playing hard on the defensive end, which is partly why those groups have had the elite defensive rating, and then turning that into transition and fast break opportunities, and the Lakers thriving offensively through that, turning defense into offense. However, one thing I had not looked at until we saw that Marcus Smart was going to be out for the game was if you take Marcus Smart out of those groupings, it drops a lot. And so it goes from a plus 7.4 net differential to plus 0.5. So the Lakers are basically treading water, a slight positive there. And that's in 265 possessions. And offensively, they drop from the 65th percentile to the 22nd. And if you look at their metrics, they really struggle from the floor from an effective field goal percentage. They struggle with turnover rate. They struggle with free throw rate. So they're turning the ball over a lot. They're not making a lot of shots. They're turning the ball over a lot, and they're not getting to the free throw line. And then, interestingly, they are maintaining the elite defense, 85th percentile defensively, 111 defensive rating, which is great, and 111 offensive rating. So again, basically net neutral there. But what we actually saw it play out, it was the inverse of this, where the offense was fantastic tonight. And it was the defense, which the Lakers just could not get stops. And anytime JJ talked about it after the game that he thought the beginning of the game set the tone. And I would agree. Dallas got off to a great start. Cooper Flagg is playing some of the best basketball we've ever seen a rookie play. Like, forget the fact that he's 19, not even 20 yet. And he's breaking all these teenage records, like just straight up rookie. Back-to-back 40-point games, first rookie to do that since Allen Iverson in 1997. He now owns the 3 highest scoring games by a teenager ever. He's just playing incredible basketball. And I thought, all things considered, was the best player on the floor. Had 45 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists, nearly had a 45-point triple-double. He was just a monster out there and really carried Dallas's offense and did it efficiently. 14 of 27 shooting, 15 of 17 at the line. But he really set the tone early. And once the Lakers got behind the 8 ball, it just was a struggle for them to get, like, they got into, back into the game for several stretches and basically were in the game from the late second quarter portion on. But anytime they got within 2 points, I think 2 was the closest they got, but like 2 points, 4 points, 6 points, Dallas would always respond with a 3, with getting to the free throw line, with some sort of bucket or even a mini run, 6-2 run, 8-2 run, whatever, and extend it back to 8 points, 10 points, 12 points. And LA just couldn't get over the hump. And I think primarily it was the defensive end. And I think that there's several reasons for it. Like, they continue to miss Marcus. The defense has undeniably been worse since Marcus has been out. So I don't want to overcomplicate that. I also think they miss Luka and Austin on, offensively. Of course, they miss Luka and Austin, but like even defensively, Luka with his size, his playmaking, his help rotations, and Austin, like, for as much as Austin can be picked on at times, I think some of that stuff is overblown. Like, the drop off from Austin to Luke Kennard is significant, and having Luke Kennard as the primary backcourt guy out there, or a guy that people can target, it's just I think there is a significant difference there between those two guys defensively. So we saw a real defensive drop off for LA. DeAndre Ayton only played 19 minutes. He didn't play the final 18 minutes of the game. JJ once again kind of throwing in the towel with him. Maxi Kleber got dusted off. Jared Vanderbilt got dusted off as well, but the Lakers got killed in his minutes. And then Jackson Hayes ended up closing the game, playing a lot of second half minutes. But the Lakers got to figure out the defensive end, because I thought tonight was like as close to their ceiling realistically with this current group. They didn't shoot the ball well from 3. They shot the ball well overall, 52%. Didn't shoot the ball well from 3, 8 for 27, 30%. But they did get to the free throw line a ton. They shot 33 free throws. They made 79% of them. So I mean, maybe we could say an average night, they're going to get to the free throw line maybe closer to like 20, 22 times with this group. They had 8 guys go to the free throw. 3 guys go to the free throw line 8 times or more between LeBron, Jake LaRavia, Jackson Hayes. I don't know how replicable that is moving forward, and just how dependable and sustainable that is moving forward. So I would say certainly this is on the high side for them from a free throw attempt perspective without Luka and Austin, but certainly they could shoot the ball better. So again, if you hit 12 threes, 14 threes, but then you get to the free throw line 10, 12 times less, it's like kind of offsets to some degree there. But them dropping 128, shooting 52% from the floor, only turning the ball over 12 times after having a few early turnovers, then cleaning that up. This was as close to their peak offensive ceiling with this group. But the defensive end, there's just so much to clean up. They played a lot of zone. The zone got diced up. They got killed in transition. And there's some things I'm certainly optimistic about within how they played tonight. And as noted after the game, this was the first minute that starting group played together all season. That lineup had not played together at all. And there was a couple of the bench groups that had never played together this season. So it's like the Lakers are now introducing some lineups here that teams are now like coming together and getting their reps for their prime lineups. The Lakers are now having to reinvent themselves on the fly. So I think it's understandable that there is going to be a little bit of an adjustment period here. They don't have a lot of margin for error, and they have to figure this out ASAP. And they get a nice palate cleanser on Tuesday with Oklahoma City coming in. I mean, I don't know how the Lakers are going to dribble the ball up the floor against them, but we'll see how that goes. But I came away far more impressed and encouraged with the offensive end, and far more concerned with the defensive end. And that was not what I was expecting, because one of the things I was talking about yesterday was I was just like, I don't know how the Lakers are going to create shots efficient. Like, I think LeBron is going to step up as the number one, and LeBron's going to have a great performance, which he did tonight. But Luke, they could run more stuff with Luke. Luke had an incredible game, first triple-double of his career, 15 points, 16 rebounds. I mean, the 16 rebounds, also a career high. 11 assists, also career. I mean, so Luke puts up career highs in 2 statistical categories. Does not shoot the ball well, 5 of 17, 1 for 5 on threes. But Luke had a really solid offensive performance. They relentlessly targeted him and successfully targeted him defensively. Of his 3 fouls, I think a couple of those were and ones. And it was like, where's Luke Kennard? We need to bring him into the action. That's been my concern with Luke in a playoff setting. And now the Lakers, he led the team in minutes, that they're probably going to have to play him mid to high 30s minutes. And that's really going to compromise LA's defense to a degree. But I think the offensive end, JJ talked about it pregame of he wanted to simplify things. And I thought the Lakers just ran a bunch of simple stuff, but it was effective. And a lot of Luke LeBron pick and roll, some Luke Rui pick and pop, Luke with Jackson, Luke with DA, LeBron with Jackson and DA, and some Maxey in there as well. And it was just a lot of basic. Luke and LeBron are going to handle the ball and create the offense. With LeBron, it was a combination of him as a ball handler to try and get a mismatch, and him as a screener to also try to draw the mismatch and then get him somewhere in the elbow area, the mid post, and then him operate out of there where he could face up and drive, he could back down, he could spin and read the defense and then attack out of that. So Luke had maybe the best all-around game of his career. LeBron, 30 points, 9 rebounds, 15 assists. And this is where I'm blending the notable performers section. Nearly a 30-point triple-double for LeBron, stepped up and was awesome tonight and really carried. The Lakers early in the second quarter, the Lakers are down by 22, and this game is just getting out of hand. From that point on, LeBron hits a 3, and the Lakers go on a 25-9 run to close the first half. LeBron scored or assisted on 18 of those 25 points. So LeBron really carried the Lakers during that second quarter stretch where they made their surge to get back into the game. And tonight, 4 turnovers. He and the centers weren't fully connected in the beginning of the game, where there was a couple pass attempts into DA. I think DA could have done a better job sealing and making himself big. I think he continues to be inconsistent in that regard of he'll have a small on him, but he just doesn't seal them. And then LeBron will try to hit him with a pass and then it gets intercepted, or DA's still jockeying for position and then it sails past him. With Jackson, there was also a couple of miscues. So the rhythm and the timing were off a little bit there, where I think there was some miscommunication and just mistimed. LeBron thinks a guy's cutting here or sealing here, and then the player isn't necessarily expecting the pass. But after that, they cleaned that up, and he missed a couple free throws late, but efficient performance, 30 points, 9 rebounds, 15 assists, 12-22 shooting. He was incredible tonight and carried a massive load. And honestly, a little bit too big of a load. I'm looking at the 39 minutes, and you guys know how I feel about I've been the minutes police over the past month. And we saw how that played out with Luka and Austin. And I just think 39, I get it's the first game without those two guys. Lakers really wanted this game. They wanted to start this stretch off on a high note. But 39 minutes for LeBron is just too much. And I think he's got to be, and they've largely done a good job of managing his minutes. But I will give a shout out to whoever asked the question yesterday about, are you concerned with them relying too much on LeBron and playing him too much? I said no, but after tonight, I'm kind of like, you know what? 39 is a little too much. I don't think LeBron should be 36 is probably his max, I think, down the stretch here. And look, the Lakers are probably going to get dog walked by OKC on Tuesday, so he will probably play under 30 minutes in that game, I would assume, based on how it's probably going to go. If you take away Luka and Austin, I don't. Even Luke Kennard, the thought of him trying to dribble against Kason Wallace up court, I'm just, not sure how that's going to go. But LeBron, I thought was great tonight and really showed that this whole time, and I think we all knew this, but this whole time with him in this 2B role or number 3 role, whatever you want to call it, he still has a lot more in the tank. And we saw tonight just him getting downhill, him getting out in transition, in addition to 15 assists is just a remarkable number. The ball movement tonight was great. I thought the offense looked great. And, aside from, there's some sloppiness, right? Especially the first quarter, first half, there was some growing pains with the Lakers just looking like, some of the lineups had literally not played before, and they looked like it. It looked like a new group coming together. But once they figured that stuff out, I thought they got a lot of good stuff. Lakers scored 30-plus points in all 4 quarters. It was not the offense that did them in tonight. It was the defense and the inability to contain dribble penetration, the inability to get back in transition, occasionally the inability to box out. I thought Dallas had some really timely offensive rebounds in this one. But I would say in terms of like a stock report, I would say the Lakers offense right now is trending up without Luka and Austin, but the defense is trending down, and it has been trending down without Marcus Smart. So maybe Marcus comes back and this all looks a bit better. I think they really missed not only his defense, but his ball handling, playmaking, and even shot creation tonight to some degree. I think that will sort itself out. I'm interested to see what they do with the starting group, because they're going to start a center. They're going to start LeBron. I think now Luke, with the performance he had today, is etched in there. I think Marcus will return. He was the 5th starter prior to injury. So that gives you 4 guys. And I think there's a battle between Rui Hachimura and Jake LaRavia. And Rui played great today, 21 points, 9 for 13 shooting, 7 rebounds from him. He's been rebounding the ball sneakily better lately. Jake LaRavia, 14 points. So he did contribute offensively. A lot of it was him bulldozing his way, playing some bully ball in the paint, getting to the line on drives and cuts. But 3 for 11 from the floor, 1 for 5 on threes, airballed a 3 early, had another 3 that was a near airball, nearly airballed a free throw. He went 7 for 8 at the line, but the one miss was a pretty bad miss. And I think all things considered, did a decent job on Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg is just too quick and athletic for him. And we've seen Jake has physical limitations against a certain caliber of athlete, and Cooper Flagg basically did whatever he wanted to him. I thought Jake got into him and was physical and tried his best to shade him to certain spots on the floor and just be a presence there. But Cooper Flagg cooked him, to be clear. But still, I think there's a pretty big gap I'll say, I think there's a pretty big gap between Rui and Jake on both sides of the ball. So it's like, do you want to prioritize the offense of Rui as a guy who can space the floor, hit threes consistently, attack closeouts, 1-2 dribble pull up, and the stability that Rui gives you offensively? Or do you want the defensive side? I think looking at the big picture with that lineup, if you already have DA, LeBron, and Luke out there, I think putting in Rui just tilts it far too much in the offensive side with not enough defense, and your entire defense is now reliant on Marcus. But then putting Jake in there, like, I think it's more balanced between offense and defense. But now now your shooters, if Luke is Luke and Marcus are maybe the co-primary guys, and JJ talked about trying to, like, LeBron's going to be the leader in usage, but they don't necessarily want him like bringing the ball up and initiating the offense because they want to conserve his energy to some degree. So maybe it's LeBron and Luke, or LeBron and Marcus, or some combination of those three as like bringing the ball up, primary ball handler, and then they will find ways to play through LeBron. But there's a big difference if it's like, Marcus, Jake, and Luke as the three off-ball shooters versus Marcus, Luke, and Rui as the three off-ball shooters playing around LeBron, and then you have DA as the rim runner and roller and whatnot. So I don't know the correct answer. Like I said yesterday that I would go with Jake and Luke as the two guys to complement DA, Marcus, and LeBron. I still lean that way, but Rui played so well today that I could understand why JJ would potentially go to him as the starter. And the Lakers need a certain amount of offense. They need a certain amount of shooting. I just also think the defense right now is my biggest concern, and that's where it's just a really big gap on both sides of the ball with both of these guys. And it just depends how you want to. You could just really lean into the offensive end and say, hey, we're gonna bring in the Banshees off the bench with Vando and Jackson and Jake, or we can keep it as it's been recently with Rui as a 6-man, staggering it a little bit with him with some of the bench groups and getting more involved that way. I don't know the right answer. I still think I would lean Jake, but I think there's a credible case to for either one of those guys to be the fifth guy. Then DA, I already touched on him. I liked his defensive start. He had a block early, a couple nice contests, was rough offensively with the ceiling, and just not. It's funny because I think it's been like the opposite lately, where I've liked his offensive performances and not liked his defensive performances. Tonight was more the opposite, where I more liked his defense and not his offense. But then in the third quarter, second half, it actually flipped, where they started to get him involved, and he had a couple nice hook shots and nice little short roll finish. But then I thought the defense and the rebounding slipped a little bit, and especially in the zone, like it just didn't really work. And JJ went away from it and didn't play in the final 18 minutes of the game. Jackson off the bench, I thought, was incredible, and this just continues this surge that Jackson's had over the last couple of weeks, where he's playing his best basketball of the season. As JJ noted, he had a rough first shift, and it wasn't looking like a Jackson game, but from then on, he was great and finished with 23 points, 8 of 10 shooting, 7 of 8 at the line, was a true force in the pick and roll, and also playing off of LeBron in the post with his flashes and cuts, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, some turnovers, and again, DA technically had 0 turnovers. He was responsible for 2 of the LeBron turnovers. It's sometimes interesting how they deem who gets penalized with the turnovers. Jackson did have a couple of those as well, ended up with 3 turnovers and foul trouble a little bit, but I thought Jackson was awesome. Maxey and Vando, I liked the defense collectively with both. Maxey had a nice cut. LeBron hits him with that one-hand laser for the dunk. Vando hit a contested 3, also had a nice cut from the elbow. LeBron hits him. He scores a contested layup over Dwight Powell. But Vando, I feel like Vando just has some bad luck with some of the lineup stuff, where he played 12 minutes tonight, but the Lakers are minus 19 in his 12 minutes. It was more than a point a minute negatively, and I think that capped him a little bit tonight. But Maxey's defense and the passing, they also played some 2 big looks with Maxey and I think it was primarily Maxey and Jackson, but he also might have gotten a couple minutes with DA. But maybe Maxey just did Maxey things, like didn't really stand out in a real way, but is just a solid, I think, innings eater at this point. And then the South Bay guys, Bronny, Kobe Buffkin, and Nick Smith Jr., I'm going to lump them all in together. And Bronny hit a couple shots. He hit a 3. But overall, I was unimpressed by all 3 of them. And JJ tested out Kobe Buffkin for a short shift, tested out Nick Smith Jr. for a short shift. Interestingly, you could say that the 2 guys they've invested in the most, or arguably have invested in the most, are Dalton Knecht and Adu Thero. They also called them back from South Bay. They did not play tonight, and South Bay lost in the semifinals in the G League playoffs. And those 2 guys could have helped South Bay tonight. And instead, they were with the parent team and didn't end up playing. And it's interesting because you could make a case like the Lakers could use a microwave shooter scorer like Dalton. He's not shot the ball well this year. I was just looking at his numbers today, just kind of remembering like what he had done. And he's shooting 30% on threes this season. So I think there's been some notable regression with Dalton's game. I don't want there to be some revisionist history of like he's last year's Dalton this year. He's not really shown that at all. But in theory, when the Lakers need some offense, they could use Dalton. And then defensively, when you need some defense, you could use Adu Thero. So that was an interesting choice that neither one of those guys played. And I think if, like Bronny, it obviously been in the rotation the last few games, and the Lakers are continuing to try to develop him and see what he has. But if it came down to like which of the other South Bay guys you're going to play, Nick Smith and Kobe, you could talk me into a little bit just from the ball handling perspective, although neither one of the guys like really had many reps even when they were out there. But Dalton and Adu are supposed to be, Dalton was number 17 pick last year. He's got the pedigree on par with Kobe and Nick. Technically Kobe was drafted ahead of him. Nick, I think like draft selection wise was a little bit behind him, but I guess that's, if Dalton can't play in this game, I think just it's over. And then Adu, we've seen JJ just not go to him, and I think there's maybe like a little bit of an injury component here, or just being conservative with his minutes. I don't know, but yeah, I don't get it in full transparency. And then in terms of stat of the night, one number really stood out to me. I mean, there's several things. Like we could look at the 128 points. We could look at the 12 turnovers, 36 assists, monster number from the Lakers. And that really might be the stat of the night. But because the Lakers lost, I think I'm going to go with a more negative number. And this is something that the Lakers are going to have to figure out. Luke Kennard played 41 minutes tonight, and the Lakers were +8 in his 41 minutes. They lost by 6, which means they were -14 in the 7 minutes Luke Kennard sat. And point Kennard, Luke Doncic, not Luka Doncic, Luke Doncic, played really well tonight offensively and gave the Lakers a baseline level of competence on the offensive end as a complementary piece to LeBron, but also, as I mentioned earlier, like bringing the ball up the floor, initiating a bunch of pick and roll actions, and leveraging his ability to get downhill, get into the paint, and passing out of that. With basically anyone else on the floor, aside from LeBron, like they just were not able to generate, like the 3 primary bench guys tonight were Jackson Hayes, Jared Vanderbilt, and Maxi Kleber to go with the 5 starters. The Lakers are down, they're down 3 ball handlers right now with no Luka, no Austin, no Marcus. They're getting Marcus back, but they're going to need more from at least one more person in the rotation, if not a couple people. And that's something that they have to figure out, because when Luke was out there and a lot of those minutes were with LeBron, the offense hummed at a certain level. When Luke came out, the Lakers were really struggling on that end. And JJ noted after the game, it's unsustainable to play Luke Kennard 41 minutes. Like, they played him too much tonight. They asked too much of him offensively, and they need to scale that back a little bit here. So if that Luke minutes go from 41 to 37, 38, the Lakers have to find a way to at least tread water in that extra 3 to 4 minutes he's off the floor, because I thought they looked like it was a mess offensively when he was off the floor, and especially if it was both he and LeBron off the floor. But even then, like LeBron just, I think at this point it's best to pair a second ball handler with him and just balance out the offense. And Luke did that great tonight, but the Lakers can't just be now. Again, Marcus I think is going to help this a lot, but we still don't have clarity on when he's going to be back. He was potentially going to be back today, then he got ruled out. We don't yet know his status for Tuesday. So Marcus is out on Tuesday. You're really relying on Luke and LeBron. And then there's this massive drop off to Bronny, Kobe Buffkin, Nick Smith, Dalton, whoever you want to handle the ball. Like, Lakers got to figure that out. In terms of 3 takeaways. So takeaway number 1, we got some news right before I went live that Luka Doncic is going to be traveling to Europe. He consulted with Lakers doctors and his own medical team, per ESPN's Shams Charania, and he is going to be making his way over to Europe for treatment in an attempt to expedite his return to play. I think this makes a lot of sense for several reasons. I mean, one, we've seen just from a Lakers perspective, Kobe and LeBron receiving similar treatment, and both guys returning earlier than expected, and both guys having pretty good results coming back from Europe. He also, I think, a personal element to this, Luka has not seen his daughters in 4 months, and I think this would be a great opportunity for him to see them potentially as he's rehabbing. So I think that's he's not, like, that's a long time to not see your children. And we know how much that's affected him over these last few months. So I think that's another subplot to all this. So I think it's admirable, and it makes a ton of sense why Luka is doing this. I think that's the type of competitive spirit you want to see from your franchise player. My one thing with all this is I just really hope he and the Lakers and his team are aligned throughout this process and are aware of the risks with all of this, because as I noted yesterday, the more I've been looking into recent hamstring injuries, the 3 guys who came back this year, or 3 of the primary guys who've been dealing with hamstring injuries this year, Jalen Williams, Aaron Gordon, and Peyton Watson, each suffered a notable setback within 2 weeks of returning during the season. So even if Luka expedites this process and it's a 2.5 or 3 week process, which seems like the quickest human possible return here, unless he's just going to go full Aaron Gordon and play on like a bum leg, which I wouldn't rule out, but like I don't think he should do. And obviously, if he's doing that, he's not MVP Luka with one leg. Like, that's just not. I mean, we saw Aaron Gordon was very physically compromised in that game 7. It's just the fear would be, okay, he maybe returns like game 4, game 3, something like that. That's great. But like, can he sustain through the rest of the series? And can he sustain into the next round without some sort of setback? And if he does have a setback, how does it affect him and impact him longer term? Because I think a great example of this was James Harden in 2021 in Brooklyn, came back from his hamstring injury a bit early, and he was not the same player for a couple of years after that. And so that's just something I think the Lakers, and even looking at, Jalen Williams was dealing with some hamstring stuff last year. Aaron Gordon was dealing with hamstring stuff in the playoffs and has still been dealing with hamstring stuff nearly a year later. So I understand that Luka led this team to 50 plus wins. He led the team to the 3 seed at the time he got injured, MVP caliber season. I understand all of the arguments for Luka to play, for Luka to return ASAP. I just think, especially like, also we'll see how the series goes, right? Who the Lakers get matched up with, how it's going. Like, if they're down 3-0, I do not think he should play in a game 4. I think that should be completely off the table. If they're down 2-1 and it's a game 4, okay, maybe they have a shot there to come back. But I just would hate for him to return to a situation where even if he returns, unless he's playing like he was just playing before the OKC game, unless he's back at that level, I have a hard time seeing the Lakers winning a first round series with Austin out and with Luka likely missing at least half the series. So I just hate to see him return and there potentially be a setback that, like, now we're worried about the start of next season with Luka. I don't think it's worth it for that. If he's completely cleared and he's got a certain ramp up period and he's able to come back, I think that would be great. But yeah, so that's my take on it. I think it'd be great and sort of like it's like the Disney movie story. If Luka comes back in the first round and he helps the Lakers have a comeback in a series and they win a first round series and then almost certainly lose in round 2 to OKC or San Antonio. But I just hope that does not come at the expense of his future health and this becoming a nagging thing that he has to deal with on a recurring basis. So I would still err on the side of being far more cautious and I don't want to say like ruling him out for the first round entirely, but I would almost prefer a situation in which, like, if the Lakers can somehow win without Luka and Austin, play him in the second round. If we're trying to force him back by game 3, I just think that's pretty unrealistic, and the odds of a setback are relatively high for a hamstring situation. Takeaway number 2, this one is simple, and I've already touched on it a little bit earlier, but LA needs South Bay to step up, and this is partly on JJ because I think JJ needs to trust South Bay more, but just looking at the roster right now, even if you add Marcus Smart to this group, and let's say it's the top 6 we were talking about in terms of potential starters, and then you have Jackson as the 7th guy, like Vando as the 8th guy, Maxi Kleba as the 9th guy, you still need someone else to step up and like ideally be better than Maxi at a minimum, but hopefully even be better than Vando at a minimum and like crack that top 8. And Bronny's had some opportunities here. I think he has had some flashes, but I don't think he's become like an ironclad part of the rotation, or at least I don't think he should be considered an ironclad part of the rotation. Kobe Buffkin, we just have not really seen, like, he was out there for 3 minutes. They got outscored by 14 points. It was not a great shift from him, although that's not all on him, of course. And then Nick Smith, just play 2 minutes. It's just hard to gauge a guy in 2 minutes. But whether it's one of those 3 or Dalton or Adu, I think the only way the Lakers hit their version of upside in whatever that looks like is some form of South Bay playing, like at least one of the South Bay guys, if not a couple of the South Bay guys. And by South Bay, I'm saying like the young guys on the roster who have been going back and forth between South Bay and the back end of the roster, which is Bronny, Kobe, Nick Smith, Dalton, and Adu. All those guys have been going back and forth between G League and parent team, and all those guys are roster players with the exception of Nick Smith Jr. So I would like to see. It seems like Bronny's the one right now who's getting the most opportunity, but I would like dust off Dalton against OKC, dust off Adu against OKC. Let's see what they can do, and then like I just don't see the Lakers hitting their theoretical ceiling with this version of the group, whatever that ceiling is, whether that's winning a game or 2 in the first round or even winning a first round series. Like I don't think that's even feasible if they're not getting at least 1, if not 2 of the young guys to pop. If those guys don't pop and it's all of the veterans, I just don't think they have enough dynamism among that top 8, top 9. Like I think that they need something here to be like Adu Firo becomes this wrecking ball in transition and is just everywhere with his energy and athleticism. Or Dalton is going supernova and is looking like the Dalton we saw last year. Or even Nick Smith Jr., who's had a couple moments throughout the season where he's been a spark plug off the bench. Kobe Buffkin had shown some flashes early in the season. Like we need to see something and something tangible, something sustainable from one of those 5 players. Otherwise, and you could throw Drew Timme into the mix as well. I think that's fair if you want to include him, but something from one of those guys that the Lakers can rely on here in the last few games and into the playoffs. Otherwise, I just think they don't have enough depth. They don't have enough firepower. They don't have enough talent and skill. And they might not, even with 1 or 2 of the South Bay guys popping. But if you're playing out here like some version of the Lakers pulling off an upset, it's got to be coming from somewhere else than like the primary guys. We all know what they're capable of. LeBron showed tonight he can slide back into being a number 1 guy from a usage perspective and be effective in that role. Rui can do more offensively. Jackson and DA combined for 36 points. Like they can step up more. Luke had the game of his life from a just all around utility perspective. But I mean, 6 guys in double figures, like you will take that. It's just, I think they need a little bit more. And similar to Luke expanding his wings here a little bit, add Marcus to this, and then one of the young guys pops. I think that is the recipe for LA hitting their ceiling. And then third and final takeaway before we get into it, I see this Golden State Houston game is crazy. So right now, in terms of West standings, as I mentioned, Lakers and Nuggets are tied for the 3 seed. OKC won tonight. They blew out Utah by 35. Minnesota lost, which locked the Lakers into... Lakers will be a top 5 seed at a minimum now. They cannot drop to number 6, which I think is good news for the Lakers because Denver's probably going to be the 3 seed now. They're going to be 3 or 4, just like... Lakers can be 3, 4, or 5. I think Denver realistically can be 3 or 4. So it eliminates playing Denver. Barring some very odd results down the stretch here, it eliminates playing Denver, which I think is a good thing for LA. But also, like, it does set up the scenario of, there's a pride perspective of you want to keep the 3 seed, you want to be the best seed possible, and you want to just have that feather in your cap of, hey, we were better than Denver, we were better than Houston, we were better than Minnesota in the regular season. At the same time, you're setting yourself up to play Minnesota, and I would still rather play Houston if I'm the Lakers. Suns beat the Bulls. The Lakers lost to the Mavs, and right now we got 16 seconds left in this Warriors-Rockets game with Golden State up 1. I don't think this really affects the Lakers. I mean, I guess there's a theoretical pathway to Houston still getting the 3 seed. I'm skeptical of that, especially with them playing Minnesota one more time. I think Houston will lose 1 to 2 more times the rest of the way, but if they do lose tonight, which I see they just scored, that will make it more likely that they end up the 5 seed, and then Lakers are somewhere between 3 and 4. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. First one from Peter. Thank you for the super chat. Putting my MD hat on again. Difference between USA and Europe in hamstring treatment is greater use of biologics. I don't know if you meant biologist. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to pretend to know what you mean here. But stem cells, etc. Think Real Madrid and EPL teams, Real Madrid, may make a few days difference, but no magic potion. Yeah, I've seen some of the Twitter doctors talking about this, and it seems like there's a bit of a divide. Like some are like, it makes sense to go to Europe. Some are, we can do the same stuff in the US. But I do think there's a track record with some of the European medical advancements, and some of those things are illegal in the US and not illegal in Europe. And we saw Kobe go overseas. We saw LeBron go overseas. This is now a time I wish Dennis Schroeder was still in the locker room so he could accidentally spill the tea and tell us what's going on with Luka, as he did with LeBron. But yeah, I mean, I think it could make a few, like maybe it makes a 3-week return table into 2.5 weeks, or 3.5, 4-week return table into 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, whatever it ends up being. I just think they got to be careful. That's all I'm saying, right? Like, I think realistically, if we're simulating the most realistic versions of how the Lakers season are going to play out, they're probably going to lose in round 1 right now. And unless, if they go up like 2-0 as an underdog in a series, I think I would have a different perspective on this. But assuming the first round series goes the way I expect it to go, and they're down 2-0 or 3-0 or 2-1, something like that early in the series, I don't think it's worth the potential risk to overexert Luka to just try and pull off a comeback and like a series upset, to then walk into the buzzsaw of OKC, especially if the Lakers drop to 4-5, which is what I think is going to happen. I don't know if it's worth the risk, but we'll see. But to your point, maybe it's only a few days, and like it still is that general 3 to 6 week timetable. I think the average, as I mentioned, the last couple of days is closer to like 5 weeks for this. So maybe it gets it down to like 4 weeks, 4.5. We'll see. But I think they just got to be careful with how much they rush him back. Mo Love OG, thank you for the super chat. Jackson seems much improved offensively and defensively. Why can't he be our starter? Luka likes him. Who's better we could get? Well, this is an interesting point because I was actually thinking about this. I didn't bring it up in the notable performers section, but I was coming off of this game. Like I said this after or at some point yesterday on the stream, where I think at this point it's like all bets are off. Like the Lakers are at such a disadvantage where it needs to purely be about like what's best for the team, what's best for the group. And I think you can make a legitimate case that Jackson should start over DA. And it's unfortunate that it would be coming in the context of Luka not being there, because the Luka Jackson connection is so strong. And I think Jackson being the starter would look great with Luka out there. But even without Luka, I just think Jackson's been better than DA for the past 2.5 weeks. I mean, JJ, if you go by JJ's rotations, he's been better. I mean, I'd be curious to go back and track how many fourth quarters and crunch time situations DA has closed over Jackson, going back to like mid-December. That's when it really started to shift with JJ not trusting DA as much. So I think you can make the case as soon as Tuesday against OKC, Jackson should just start over DA. I agree with you. I think he's got a higher floor. I think DA's like, the one thing I talk about when we talk about these two is like the rebounding is a big difference. Now you don't always get the rebounding from DA. So like tonight you didn't get the rebounding from DA, and that's where I think Jackson becomes more playable. And partly you didn't get the rebounding because Luke Kennard had career high 16 rebounds. But outside of the rebounding, I think Jackson's a better lob threat. I think he's a better roller. I think he's a better short roll decision maker and playmaker and passer. I think he's a better cutter. I think he's a more mobile defender. And I think he's been a better rim protector and interior defender lately. I would say Ayton, of course, has got the floaters and like the little 10 to 16 foot jumper, but that's not been consistent. And we saw today, like they tried throwing him the ball and he just basically turned and like kind of flung up a couple shots that didn't really have a chance. So I like, he doesn't even have that advantage necessarily anymore. He's a better like mid-range finisher. He's a better screener than Jackson, and he's a bigger body for like a Jokic matchup or maybe a Şengün matchup where you want a bigger force in there. But outside of that, I think like if, depending on how many categories you want to stretch this to, I think Jackson would win like, if you just say like 12 categories, I think Jackson probably wins 7 or 8 of them. And I do think at this point he checks more boxes than DA. So I would lean him as the starter for now. Longer term, I don't think I think Jackson is an elite backup. There might be some contexts or situations where you could argue he's like a fringe starting center, but I don't think I mean, again, when I made this point before, actually with DA, not even Jackson, but like when you look at the rest of like San Antonio's got Wemby, Denver's got Jokic, Houston's got Şengün, Minnesota's got Gobert and Naz Reid, and OKC's got Hartenstein and Chet. Like Jackson's just not in that same universe as any of those guys, and neither is DA. So I do think the Lakers need to bolster the center spot with a better player. But if Jackson's like, maybe it's a committee situation, maybe they get a placeholder, maybe it's Mitchell Robinson is like your primary addition and he's your starter, but then because his minutes have been reduced and he's been on a bit of a load management program in New York, that works with Jackson, and it's sort of like Mitchell Robinson plays 24, 26 minutes a night. Jackson plays 22, 24 minutes a night off the bench, and I think they complement each other well. Mitchell Robinson's one of the best rebounders in the NBA. He is a tough, physical, hard-nosed player. He's also a good lob threat, like not the same lob threat he was earlier in his career. But I think like that's an interesting pairing. On the lower end, it's like maybe a Robert Williams type, someone like that. But I would still like for them to get the Kessler or potentially the Claxton or someone of like a clear 30-plus minute a night starting center. But if they don't go that route and it's just not realistic, I'd be cool with like Jackson in more of a platoon, but I would still probably prefer someone else starting over him. But I have no issue with them giving him a solid raise, and I have no issue with them keeping him as like a 20-plus, 22, even 24-plus like backup. Like I think if they want a two-headed monster at center, that's okay. But I still think just looking at the rest of the West, OKC and San Antonio are not going anywhere for the next half decade. Denver's not going anywhere for the next 2-3 years. Minnesota's probably not going anywhere for the next couple of years. Houston, I have no idea what's happening with that situation, but like 4 of those teams are gonna be in the Lakers' way for the next few years. And I think the center spot has been, especially post Luka trade, like that has become a glaring deficiency for the Lakers. So as much as I like Jackson and I think he's been playing pretty good basketball, I still don't think he's on the level of the other starting centers on the top West teams. And I think that's like, you're not going to get a Wemby, you're not going to get a Jokic. I'm not like saying the Lakers need to go out and get an all NBA first team MVP candidate, but I think there's a pretty big gap between like, Jackson is here. Those guys are here. Walker Kessler's somewhere in here, but I think he's more on like, their side of the ledger rather than Jackson's side. So I think it depends on what they can realistically do this summer. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. With this group plus Marcus, we can beat current Mavs. D was the problem. Agreed. I think that with Marcus, the Lakers win this game. The flip side to this is that the Lakers, like, I know Cooper Flagg's balling out right now. He's playing great basketball and he's having a really strong close to the season. The level that whether it's the Timberwolves or the Rockets, those teams are multiple notches, multiple levels, multiple tiers above the Mavericks. Like the Mavericks are tanking. They are one of the worst teams in the West. And I just like, if we're talking about like, oh, if the Lakers had Mark, and I'm not trying to pick on your question here. I'm just, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, like kind of coming away from it with like an optimistic point of view of like, oh, if they had Marcus tonight, they would have won. But then I took a step back and I was like, we're talking about the Mavericks here. Like it's just they're gonna like, especially if they somehow stay at 3 and are playing Minnesota in round 1. It's like a Minnesota playoff team. I know Minnesota's been up and down and they've been down lately. I still do like think that team compared to this version of the Lakers team, it's just a very lopsided matchup. And I think to your point, like there are some things to like about the offense, like a lot of things to like about the offense. Defense could be much better, but I also think that there's like just a basic manpower issue right now where I said earlier, not even earlier, like recently, I think you could argue that the Lakers only have like 3 true starting level players on a contender, and that's the big 3. I think you can maybe stretch that to 4 with Marcus, but now they're going to be starting at least 3 of those guys who I am not considering in this conversation of like a contending level starting player. And then that also means you're shifting up. Like Maxi Kleber might end up being the Lakers' 8th man, which I think is like a problem. Jared Vanderbilt is going from like DNP-CED to maybe a big part of the, like, it's just, you're seeing the trickle down effect of all these guys being slotted up that I think is a concern with their playoff viability for me. Maine, thank you for the super chat. 1 out of 2. I said last stream that this Lakers team is barely a play-in team without 77 and a bottom 5 team in the league without AR and 77. The Lakers might even lose the Utah game if they don't do their tanking thing. Hopefully Luka doesn't come back early and cause long-term issues. DA is a total bum. I wouldn't go as far as to say bottom 5 team in the league. I would still say, let's like assume Marcus is back. I think they're better than Utah, Sacramento, New Orleans, Dallas, Memphis. I don't think, what I will say is I think they're closer to being a lottery. Like, I think they're probably a lottery team. Now, technically, if you're moving the Lakers out of the top, like out of the 3 spot, you slide Denver up to 3, Houston up to, like, you're moving the other teams up. Lakers could maybe be the 10 seed in the play-in, but they're kind of right there in that. Yeah, I would say like they could be the 10 seed. And then in the East, I think they're better than Washington, this version of Indiana, Brooklyn, this version of Chicago. Then once you get to Milwaukee, depends like what's going on with Giannis. But I mean, that's the whole situation right now. But if Giannis is healthy, I would, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about basically like, I think they're in like the 10-11 range in both conferences. So I would say they're borderline bottom 10 team, but I would definitely say not a top 15 team in the league. I would, off the top of my head, somewhere between like 19 to 21. But yeah, I mean, I would pick in the West, I would pick, of course, the other 5 teams ahead of them. I would pick Phoenix ahead of them. I'd pick the Clippers ahead of them. I'd pick Warriors with Steph ahead of them. And Portland's sneakily been playing really well lately. 3-game win streak, 8-2 in their last 10. I might pick Portland's maybe like a close one, but that's kind of the level I would put them at, is like maybe a Portland. And then in the East, I mean, some of those teams are playing really bad right now. I wouldn't put them anywhere in the top 6. And then I wouldn't put them above Charlotte. And then you get into like the Orlando, Miami, Toronto range, that there may be somewhere in there as well. So yeah, I mean, I think they're below league average for sure, and you're probably closer to 20th than 15th. But I get your general point. Like, they can lose to Utah. It's certainly possible. And with DA, I have been pretty disappointed for, honestly, the last 3 months. Peter, thank you for the super chat. Minnesota is the easier matchup. People putting way too much stock with those 2 wins in Houston. They've won 5 in a row, and Ant hobbled, and Jay, I'm likely out. So if Jaden McDaniels is out, I think I would lean Houston. I mean, they're going to have, I think Ant will be okay. That could just be blind optimism, but they're going to have a week off in between the end of the regular season, and I think Ant should be fine. Jaden McDaniels is the one I'd be more concerned with if I'm the Wolves. That does swing the matchup. I know Houston. So what? I did. Houston won tonight, so that does keep the pursuit of the 3 seed alive. They're now a full game back of Denver and the Lakers. Technically 2 for the Lakers because Lakers have the tiebreaker. I don't trust. Like, there's multiple things I don't trust. I haven't loved the body language and the general vibe with Houston post All-Star break. To your point, I know they've won 5 in a row, but I think there's multiple things here. I think there's a proof of concept with this Minnesota team. They've made the conference finals back-to-back years. I know it wasn't this exact group with the Randall Towns trade, but they still made the conference finals last year. They beat the Lakers handedly in that first round series. And while both teams are they're pretty close from a statistical perspective in terms of their offensive rating, defensive rating, and net rating, I still think Minnesota has a much higher offensive ceiling than Houston does. I think like KD's KD, right? And Şengün, I mean, they have 2 all-star, potentially even third-team All-NBA guys. So I'm not trying to dismiss or overlook Houston. I just think when you look at also some of the crunch time numbers, Minnesota is above average in crunch time, not by much, but they are. Houston's one of the worst crunch time teams in the league and one of the worst crunch time playoff teams in the league. I just think if you're like, okay, Lakers are down 5 with 5 minutes left against Minnesota or against Houston, which team would you rather be facing? I would much rather be facing Houston. I don't think it's relatively close. I don't even have to think about it for more than a half second. If I'm trying to think about which is the team that's going to, I'm not going to use like a crass phrase here, but like which team is going to choke, we'll say, down the stretch, I think it's far more likely to be Houston than Minnesota. I'm more afraid of Ant than I am KD, at least this version of KD. Ant has last couple postseasons played at a top 5 player level. I know he's not considered a top 5 player and he's kind of on that borderline, but if you just look at his playoff numbers and performance, like Ant has been a stud in the playoffs. So I just think like he has a higher ceiling than KD, or at least like this version of KD, of course. We're not talking about prime KD. I just have way more questions with the Houston team and their vibe. And they do feel like a group that could quickly unravel if the Lakers somehow steal a game 1 against Houston. I could see the Houston situation going and like everyone's pointing fingers at each other. The vibes are terrible and Houston starts to unravel. Minnesota, I think if they lost game 1 to the Lakers, would just be like, we're still beating this team in 5. Like, I don't think, I just think there's, like, I think Minnesota in the playoffs is a materially different team than they are in the regular season. I don't necessarily know why. I just think it's part of the makeup with this group. Because we've had, like last year, there was moments where it was like the Minnesota things is going off the rails. Year before, similar thing. This is just kind of part of their makeup in the regular season. They haven't been like a dominant regular season team. But look, if Ant is actually hurt going into round 1 and like compromised and Jaden McDaniels is out, yes, I agree. Houston's the better team. But assuming that Ant gets like pretty close to full strength and Jaden McDaniels is able to return or maybe even able to return at some point in the early to mid portion of the series, I think Minnesota's still better. Like I just don't believe in Houston. And there's, that's like more of a vibe, honestly, than anything. But I'll say this. I'm fairly confident, like before the Lakers had this Luka Austin situation just happen in back-to-back days, like everyone in the West wanted Houston. Like anyone I've talked to, and not even saying like Lakers related, just in general, talking to people at games, talking to people around the league, everyone viewed Houston as the 6th best team in the West and like the team you'd want to play in round 1. So I think that's still how I feel. But to your point, if it really comes down to the injuries, I think that would swing it in Minnesota's favor. But for the Lakers, to be clear here, I don't think you try to play with the positions. I think you try to win out. You try to do within reason, right? You're not trying to put 40 minutes on LeBron every single night. You're not trying to put 40 minutes on Luke. You are going to lose the OKC game. I just don't see a scenario in which they win that game. And then you try to split Golden State, Phoenix, and try to beat Utah, right? And you go 2-2 down the final 4, and you have a shot to be the 3 seed, depending on what happens with Denver, but likely you're 4. Then you play Houston. They can only manipulate the matchup so much at this point, right? I think you're just talking about in general, like what's the best outcome. I just don't see the Lakers staying at 3. I'd be pretty surprised if they do. Then Jay, thank you for the super chat. The frustrating thing about this this was the version of LeBron I thought we could get in the playoffs with Luka and AR. He just can't do this by himself at 41. 100% agree. I have said this multiple times recently. I was very optimistic about the version of LeBron I thought we were going to get in the postseason. LeBron is a career playoff riser. And I thought even last year, like, remember last year, he had the injury and he came back late in the season and like he was good, but I don't think he was like quite back to the level that he was at pre-injury. And then come playoff time, I thought he looked much better in that first round series than he did in the preceding regular season games to close out the season. Like LeBron, and even tonight, like he had a bit of a slow start with a couple of those interior pass turnovers to DA, and like he hit a couple shots, but he hadn't really gone off. And then it felt like the first like 14, 15 minutes of the game, he was kind of processing everything and analyzing everything and just doing the LeBron supercomputer thing. And then around that 8 minute mark of the second quarter, he just took over and willed the Lakers into a monster run to close the first half. And then they were winning the LeBron minutes in the second half. So I think it's unfortunate that we're not going to get to see that. But that, like this version of LeBron with the version of Luka we were seeing and the version of Austin that he had largely been beginning in the beginning of March. I mean, I think that's a trio that could have given San Antonio some problems in round two, but we're just not going to see that, unfortunately. And then Jay again, Rob's done a masterful job over the years of building a roster with players with just one skill: can shoot but can't defend, can defend but can't shoot. Yes, this is a great point, and a point that I have made before. I think the Lakers have far too many one-way players on this team, but it's been an epidemic for the roster for years now. I think really starting with the 2021-22 team. You can even debate going back to like the 2020-2021 team. Like, I don't know where I fall. I still think the title team was better. I mean, the title team won the title, but I know that there's been some people who have argued the title defense team was actually better. And there are some like that group actually led the league in defense, and they led the league in defense with both LeBron and AD missing cumulatively like 3-4 months of basketball. And the offense took a hit, of course, without them. But like surprisingly, they held their own on the defensive side. And Marc Gasol still had KCP, Caruso, Kuzma, and Wes Matthews, and like they were getting by. Keefe was still there. Like they were getting by with that group on the defensive side. But even that group started to shift more like one-dimensional guys with like Trez. Like your Trez was a one-dimensional player. Schroeder was, he was kind of a two-way guy with the Lakers, I would say. Like the shot selection, the decision-making sometimes offensively was a little frustrating, but he did deliver offensively and defensively. He could be a solid point of attack guy. But we saw, I think, like the Danny Green trade to me, Danny Green plus the first for Schroeder, which is in retrospect a pretty heavy price to pay. And that I believe that pick ended up being the Jaden McDaniels pick, if I'm not mistaken. That trade, which is just like, imagine Jaden McDaniels on the Lakers. That trade to me was the sign that the Lakers were dramatically shifting their roster building approach. And then you also follow that up with just changing the center group with going with JaVale and Dwight into Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell. And then from that point on, they just went like far more offensive, and they have not been able to put together the right combination of two-way talent. And it really has been like, I feel like the group has really yo-yoed, where if you just look at the last, like throw 2021-22 aside because that group was terrible, but starting with 2022-23, like post trade deadline, they've always been like top 10 or top 10-ish on one side of the ball and closer to bottom 10 on the other side of the ball. And it's like they can't, like even when they've been good, which 2023 they make the conference finals run, 2022 25. They're the 3 seed. This year, they're going to be the 3 or 4 seed. They still have been closer to being bottom 10 or average at best, but more, closer to being bottom 10 on one side of the ball. And it's like they win with like being dominant on one side or really good on one side. And then the other side, they're kind of just bleh. And I think that's a departure from some of the other teams where look at a lot of the good teams over the last few years. A lot, like the very best teams are close to top 10 on both sides of the ball. And they're clearly above average on both sides of the ball. And the Lakers have just not been able to build those types of rosters. So yeah, I think it's more so been the defensive end. I think that's been the side that they have been really lacking the last few years. But it's we can look at the 3-and-D guys that they've had, and basically all of them are either defenders who can't shoot or shooters who can't defend. It's one or the other, and it's been a real blind spot. Sir Haro, thank you for the super chat. Why is AR on the bench? Please go home and rest. He was on the bench because he was already on the trip with the team, and he made the trip out to Dallas to get his 2 MRIs, which is just a wild story that they MRI'd Austin's body at the wrong part on the first one. He had to do a second MRI. That's pretty crazy, but I think he'll go home he'll go home tonight when they go home, and I think he wanted to be there just to be with the group and to support them. I don't know if he's going to go to Golden State on Thursday, but I support a guy being there. And if Luka wasn't going to Europe right now, I think Luka would have been there as well. So I get the injured guys wanting to be there, but I also understand your point of like, just go home and rest. But AR was already on the trip. He was already in Dallas. Like, I do respect that he wanted to be at the game and support his teammates. Vic, thank you for the super chat. Do you rest guys likely losing 3 seed and locked into 5th, first round against Rockets, best chance to buy Luka time, scared of locked in playoff Wolves? You are in full agreement with Rockets being the best matchup, in my opinion, and me being afraid of the Wolves. I just have a hard time seeing how the Lakers have success with this. Like, I thought that Luka and Austin both cooked the Wolves this season, and we only saw LeBron against them once. Actually, we have not seen LeBron against the Wolves. I stand corrected. He did not play in that Minnesota game. So we can't even say like I don't know what LeBron would look like against the Wolves this year. We haven't seen it since the playoffs, but Luka and Austin cooked them in 2 of the 3 games. On the 3rd game, Austin played by himself and cooked them. So just losing that level of shot creation and playmaking and just offensive production against that team, I don't think you're replacing that with Luke Kennard, Marcus Smart, and LeBron. I just because LeBron was already going to give you a certain amount of production, and he will give you more, but the increased LeBron production plus Luke Kennard and Marcus Smart, that's not replacing Luka and Austin. I think that's the simplest way to put it. I don't think the Lakers are going to rest guys. I could see them maybe resting guys in the back-to-back that they have on Thursday, Friday, and then framing it as we just want to be healthy going to the playoffs. We don't want to put anybody at risk on a back-to-back. So maybe they rest LeBron, Marcus, maybe another guy or two, but they're going for it. They want to be the 3 seed. JJ has said that now a couple times, that they want to be the best seed possible. They want to be the 3 seed. So I think that's what's going to happen. David, thank you for the super chat. Early final exit was the most likely regardless of March. Heavy minutes took toll. Want to see LBJ compete for real one last time. Not sure with Lakers. I think the Lakers had a chance to, I wouldn't even say a chance. I would have picked, I said my predictions were Lakers over Rockets in 5. And this is with healthy Luka and Austin. Lakers over Rockets in 5 and Lakers over Wolves in 6. Denver would have been a tricky one, to be honest. With how they're playing recently, they just beat San Antonio. That would have been a really tough one to predict. And I thought they were the second best team going into the season. So there is part of me that's still married to my priors of what I like. I think Denver has a higher ceiling than the Lakers, regardless of who would win in a 7-game series. But that would have been a tough series to predict. But there's almost no way that they were going to play in round one, assuming like if Luka and Austin had not gone out, they would have been the 3-4 in some order. So I don't even think we would have had to worry about projecting that. Would have just been them versus Houston or Minnesota. I think they would have beaten either one of them. But come round two, I think with how San Antonio is playing right now, I mean, they've been better than the Thunder over the past 2.5 months. And they've also had the Thunder's number. So San Antonio is a monster team, and OKC is OKC, as we saw them humble the Lakers. So, yeah, I mean, I would not have picked them over San Antonio or OKC. I don't think an OKC series would have been remotely close. I think a San Antonio series could have been competitive, but I still would have picked San Antonio as like the clear favorites. But so I wouldn't like, yes, if I mean, depends what you determine as an early exit. Do you determine second round as early exit? Because if so, then I would agree with that. If you're saying like first round exit, I'm not quite there. I do agree. Heavy minutes took a toll. I've been talking about that the last couple of weeks, even before this, and then it happened, and we're here now. In terms of LeBron competing, if you look at the rumored destinations, it's Cleveland, it's Golden State, it's New York. I think ESPN even threw in like the Clippers and the Nuggets. Outside of Denver, I don't think you can like say that. I think it'd be really interesting if he was in Denver. I don't see LeBron going to Denver. I mean, he was just talking about, I'm not going to get into the whole cities thing, but like I could see him liking Denver more than Milwaukee and Memphis, especially because he didn't name Denver as one of those cities. But I don't think Denver's at like the top of LeBron's list of favorite cities. So, Clippers, I think it would poison the water with like the Laker fans and just like what he's done in LA if he goes across the city to the Clippers. So I don't see that happening. And he's even taken some shots at the Clippers through the years. Like I just don't see that happening. Knicks, there's the whole Dolan thing that I've been skeptical about of just like, I don't think he's a big Dolan guy. So, and then Cleveland, he just talked about adding them to the list of, you mentioned Milwaukee, Memphis. He's like, and I don't even like going home, and I'm from there. So that's another city he kind of threw. So, I mean, maybe Golden State. And I know that's the one that's been out there. They pursued LeBron a couple years ago. That's, I guess, maybe the only other. But then I'm like, I think the Lakers situation is better than Golden State. So I don't really see another situation unless he's going to OKC or San Antonio or Denver, Detroit. He's not going to Boston, New York. Like there's only a few teams I think you could credibly argue are at or above the Lakers level from a competitive standpoint, like going into next season. So yeah, I think it still is with the Lakers, like the best chance for LeBron. Fahim, thank you for the super chat. With this end to his first season as majority owner, what kind of tolerance do you think Walter will have in Rob's keep your job conservative decision-making moving forward, given 77's prime and the Dodgers' excellence? Great question that, to be completely honest, I don't have a great read on as of right now. I'm still trying to glean more information on just like all the changes that are going on and just the new infrastructure and hierarchy and whatnot. I will say that I continue to hear like Rob is not going anywhere, and I would be shocked if he was not the president of basketball operations and GM going into next season. So I mean, he just signed an extension not even a year ago. The Lakers are having back-to-back 51 seasons for the first time since 2010 and 2011. I know it's not going to end the way that anybody wants it to end, but I also don't think that means he's going to lose his job. So I think there's a lot of pressure on him this summer to nail the summer, and it's not just for the job part. It's as you're laying out, like they want a certain standard of excellence annually. there's also Luka in his prime. And if you just run it back or add like one kind of mid-tier piece, you're not really setting up Luka for success next season. So I think it's a huge summer for Rob to really nail. And he's got to nail Austin's contract. He's got to nail LeBron's contract. If LeBron stays, he's got to nail the cap space. He's got to nail the 2026 pick. And there's going to be a lot of moving parts with multiple free agents, a couple player options, a couple team or one team option. What do you do with Vando? What do you do with Dalton? Like everything is up for grabs in terms of what could happen. Like I think there's a version where the Lakers have like 10 or 11 of the same 15 guys on next year's team. I think there's also a version of this where they have like 5 or 6 of the same players on next year's team. I would hope it's closer to the latter, and I personally would like to see a larger makeover to this roster. Like I think they've largely overachieved due to a combination of the greatness at the top of the roster and JJ's ability to maximize a team in the regular season, but that also leads to your team, or particularly your stars, your best players being tired and ran into the ground come playoff time. And also we just don't, we've had one playoff series with JJ. I think it's too early to really judge what type of playoff coach he is. Although I would say that first round series left much to be desired, especially with the rotation stuff and just how he managed things. So there's a lot of questions still with the group, but like I would like to see, Luka, Austin, LeBron, if they figure out the right contract situation, and then Marcus, Jackson, Luke. I think Adu will still be there. Everybody else, I think it's up for like who fits, what's the contract, what's the context, all that stuff. So I think there's gonna be a lot of moving parts this summer, but a lot of pressure on him for sure to deliver. Jeffrey J. Cal, thank you for the super chat. Wow. James had 30, Luke had a triple-double, Rui 21, Jax 23, and we still lose. Also, Braun, too many minutes and no time for a head scratcher. I agree. I was scratching my head as well. Especially once I saw Nick Smith Jr. in, I was like, okay, Nick Smith Jr. has not played in a while, and like I just don't see why you can't dust off Adu. But yeah. I mean, a lot of things went right for the Lakers, and they still lost. And you could look at that as like, okay, some optimism. You could also look at it as, I don't know, like, I mean, they're certainly not going to look this good offensively against OKC on Tuesday. And that game I'll throw to the side because it's OKC. But even thinking about like Golden State and Phoenix, I don't know we're going to get repeat performances from everybody offensively. So the defense has to be much better. And I think they need multiple guys to step up. Tan Man, thank you for the super chat. Drew Timmy time. We'll see. I mean, tonight could have been a Drew Timmy game, but they chose not to. So I know there's a South Bay situation, but I would like to see him play a little bit. Mint Millions, thank you for the super chat. All I've wanted is for LeBron to get his 5th ring to close on Jordan. He deserves it, and getting so unlucky. Lakers have effed him. He'd have more rings on other teams. I agree that he's gotten very unlucky. There's just been a lot of bad breaks for the Lakers over the last few years. Like, it's funny because they've also over that time pulled off like maybe the greatest trade in NBA history over that time. So it's like a big aside within this context of Lakers getting a lot of bad breaks. But like, if you go back to, I mean, I was skeptical of the Russ trade, but the Russ trade went about as bad as it could have, right? Like if we were playing out the theoretical scenarios in which the Russ trade could have played out, that had to be like a bottom 10th percentile outcome for the Russ trade, right? Like that was, I was pretty low on it, and it was even worse than I thought it was going to be. Like I did not think it was going to be that bad. And so the Russ trade happens, and there's a sliding doors moment there where they could have traded for Buddy Hield and they could have kept KCP, and they didn't do that. So that's like a what if. Then you also have what if you trade for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield at the beginning of the 2022-23 season rather than waiting until the deadline and basically punting on over half the season and being the 13 seed at the deadline and then making over the trade and going on this run, and guys kind of were ran into the ground and tired going into that playoff run, and like they pushed it to the conference finals, but they ran out of gas. I think there's an alternate situation where that team is a 50-plus win team with Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, and there maybe it still ends up in the same result of they lose in the conference finals, but it's a more competitive series and you feel better about it rather than being like, oh, this was a 7 seed who got hot at the right time and made the conference finals and then got swept. It was a close sweep, but sweep nonetheless. Then 2024. I mean, they ran into Denver, who just had their number. If they'd gotten the 8 seed, I think they would have had a competitive first round series with OKC. I still think OKC beats them, but they had played well against OKC. And then last year, they should have won, but you had the Luka situation, game 3, the game 4 second half, and then this year, of course, now the Luka AR situation. So yeah, I think LeBron's had some bad luck. He's had some injuries. He had the injuries in 2023, but he's had some late season stuff. Lakers have had some bad breaks the last few years. Just even throughout Kendrick Nunn turns into a pumpkin. Gabe Vincent turns into a pumpkin. Darvin is obsessed with Torian Ham and Torian Ham. Freudian slip there. Torian Prince, who is playing over Rui and D'Lo and Austin, and it's like your third, fourth, and fifth highest paid players are coming off the bench for some reason and being marginalized. There's been a lot of questionable things happening. And then the Lakers just like not making trades in the summer, not going for it, not trading their picks. It's been a tough last few years in terms of like multiple layers of all this. Would LeBron have more rings in a different situation? I think it depends on the team. I think Denver pursued him in 2018. That would have been fascinating if he had gone to Denver. Like, we didn't know at the time what Jokic was going to turn into or what Murray was going to turn into, but a Jokic, LeBron, Murray trio, and maybe you still add Aaron Gordon or I don't know what that, or even if it's just LeBron in the Aaron Gordon role, but then you still get MPJ, like that would have been interesting. Although I think the years Murray was out or they were depleted, you have LeBron, so you're not really down. You still have LeBron and Jokic, but maybe they won a couple rings or 2-3 rings in that situation, depending on how Denver handles the roster. But I don't know where else he was going. Staying in Cleveland, I don't think was going to lead to more rings. And then I don't know if we go back to 2018, like where else he wants to come back to Miami. Like it kind of felt like this. This was the situation that had been out there since 2017, and to the point of like the Westbrook stuff not working out. I think LeBron's tenure has been. It's tough to say. It's been disappointing because he won a championship. So like just by winning a championship, I think inherently something can't be disappointing. But outside of the championship season, I think they have pretty much been disappointing every other season. And I don't put that on LeBron. I put that on a lot of other factors. Like, you could put some of the Westbrook trade on him, but it's been unlucky, to your point. And yeah, it stinks for him and like the way that his career is ending. Cause I think he clearly has been, just last year he was top 6 in MVP and first team All NBA. If some things break in his favor here over these last few years, could have had another ring, I think. Jay, thank you for the super chat. Multiple Twitter doctors have said 2 to 3 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks now for Luka after Europe news. For what it's worth, my guess is game 4, and the hope is Bron can steal. I alluded to that a little bit earlier in terms of the more optimistic timetable. But yeah, it sounds like 2 weeks to me is too soon. I think my goal, look, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, so I'm not going to pretend to have like the greatest insight on this, and I will leave it to the professionals. But I would say, just from a practical, perspective here, if the original timetable was 3 to 6 weeks, I would be okay with something on the 3-week side. And it's like, okay, we did everything we can to make Luka as like ready as possible 3 weeks in. And 3 weeks is going to be, I think you'd be 3 games into the series. It would be, to your point, like coming back for game 4. That's like I think the shortest thing they should entertain. 2 weeks to me is like, if you're trying to have him ready for game 1, I think that's a mistake. Now, maybe it miraculously happens and whatever treatment he gets over there, it works and he's back and he could play. And like, look, that would be a great outcome for the Lakers. That would be a great outcome for the first round. I just think based on the history with this injury and more so like the recent history with this injury and several players who are similar size and weights to Luka and how quickly they re-injured it. And in basically all the cases, they were out for longer than 2 to 3 weeks. Like these guys all missed. I think the average between the 3 players I referenced earlier was something like 5.5 weeks. So they all missed. And now they weren't getting the treatment that Luka's about to get. But still, if it's like Luka's returning in 2 weeks and these other guys all were out for 5 weeks and then got injured again, like I would just be a little nervous about that. So if he's like, maybe internally they're like, hey, Luka, this is probably a 5 to 6 week injury. And he's like, hey, can I cut this down to 3 or 4? I think that's great. Like if you can cut down a week or 2 and make it more on the optimistic side of the timetable, I think that's awesome. If it's like we're trying to cut the 3-week timetable down to 1 to 2 weeks, I think that's a giant mistake that they got to be careful with. But we'll see. I don't know how it's going to play out. But I think to your point, like a mid first round return is probably one of the most optimistic scenarios. And then it's just, you got to hope the Lakers aren't down 3-0. Daniel, thank you for the super chat. JJ has a lot of talent from a schematic standpoint, but unfortunately is like Tibbs where he overplays the starters / refuses to play young guys. I've been seeing the Tibbs comparisons lately, and I understand. I think there are some similarities between the two in terms of maximizing the regular season and overachieving with their rosters. Like Tibbs was a hell of a defensive coach, and I think JJ has become a really good defensive coach from a schematic standpoint. And I think he's also a good, like, I'm with you. I think from a schematic standpoint, JJ, you look at his ATOs, you look at his sideline out of bounds plays, baseline out of bounds plays. I think he's a top 5 coach in terms of drawing up a set for a specific possession. Like you need an awesome set here to get an open shot, an open look. I think JJ's on the short list of best coaches in the league to do that. I think the offensive stuff has been a little disorganized at times, and he's let the stars like run the show in a way that I think they could rein it in a little bit more and make sure they're a little bit more organized. But like that had even been better in March. The defensive side, I mean, he's squeezed all the lemon juice out of the lemon here in terms of like getting this group to defend at a top 10 level for a month. I think that alone should put him in the coach of the year race. But there also is an element, to your point, of like Tibbs kind of like ruined Luol Deng's career and even like Joakim Noah's career to a degree. And you look at what like the trajectory with those guys and how quickly they faded physically and just how many years they were playing high 30s and 40 minutes year after year after year. I think there was, to me, I have a bit of a delineation with like the previous era of the NBA and the more modern era in that like 2010, 2011. Like I kind of feel like for me, the 2011 Mavericks are sort of like the first like modern champion, in my opinion, with like closer to how the game is played now. And that was around the time when teams started to load manage more, reduce guys' minutes, and Tibbs went the opposite way and ran multiple of his rotation guys into the ground. And after a few years under Tibbs, it was just like they were cooked physically. That would be my fear here right now with JJ. And to be fair, he's not like doing it to the Tibbs level, but multiple months here where Luka and Austin are in the top 5 in minutes played. And I just think, like, yes, the Lakers are top heavy. They don't have the best bench, the best depth. They were without LeBron to start the season, but I just think he overplayed Luka and Austin all season. Like, it got worse more recently, but they were in the top 5 in minutes in December as well. So, like, this has been an ongoing thing all season where I just think there's a departure between what the other best teams in the league are doing with reducing the minutes of Shea and Jokic and Wemby and Ant and some of these guys, and what the Lakers are doing with Luka and Austin. You got to play 38, 39, 40 minutes night after night after night. We're up 20 against a bad team. You're still in with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Like, I just think at some point you got to just trust the bench there. And to your point, also trust the young guys. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. Can we do an AR Steph sign and trade, both free agents this coming summer? No, I mean, the Warriors are not trading Steph for Austin Reaves. That's not happening. I think he's going to retire a Warrior. I think he's going to go down as a one-team guy. If he were to somehow leave Golden State, I think it would be Charlotte and just going back home and closing his career out there. And that's actually an interesting possibility with how Charlotte has been, playing and progressing this season. But no, they're not doing AR for Steph. Rude, thank you for the super chat. Tell JJ you have 82 games to develop youth. LOL. What's funny is, like, JJ, I would be really interested to see how he coached a young team and, like, just a team that, like, just a rebuilding team. And we've seen, like I think Doc Rivers, actually, if you look at, I think you could argue outside of the championship year where a lot of things broke right for Boston, and, like, that was a great team. That was one of the best modern defenses. They ushered in this new era of, like, big threes, and everything went right. That was a dominant team, dominant season. But so, like, that's the best coaching job of Doc Rivers' career. Outside of that, you could argue his best 2 seasons as a coach were that, I believe it was the 2000 Magic, the 99-2000 Magic. Could have been 2000-2001, but I'm pretty sure it was the 99-2000. And that 2017-18, was it? No, 2018-19, excuse me, Clippers team. The season before, they got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And those 2 teams were teams with rebuilding, not high expectations, like not even expected to be playoff teams. And he coached them into being playoff teams. And, that Magic team lost, but he won Coach of the Year. And then the Clippers team, they took a couple games off the Warriors, which that was the year they had added Boogie. And that Warriors team ended up losing in the finals to Toronto. But, like, so point being with Doc, for example, is, like, I think he coaches well when the team has no expectations, and it's sort of like he could kind of muck it up and figure out the way to optimize that group. But when we've seen him coach with expectations, it's been a lot of the 3-1 leads or just blowing leads in the playoffs, underachieving, etc. JJ's been like, you give me a couple stars and of course that's just like the makeup of the Lakers roster. Like, he's been able to maximize it in the regular season, but I really would be curious to see what he would look like in, like, the Doc situation of you get, like, Lou Williams is your best player. What does that look like for JJ, right? So I'd be curious to see that. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Disappointed in JJ's defensive schemes. Going to switch everything D was fine, except for Luke switching on a flag every possession. Jake gave up the switch so easily, and flag attacked every time. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, though. Like, the Lakers have been doing this all season, and they actually were doing this going back to last season. Because the same thing would happen with Gabe. Like, Gabe was a better defender than Luke, but Gabe was also 6'2". And if you were 6'7" or above, you could just turn and shoot over him or shoulder check him, create space, and then shoot over him. So I agree with you that, they mixed in the zone. They went to a lot of switching. And if I'm watching film on the Lakers, I am spamming the targeting Luke in some sort of side pick and roll and then attacking him in the middle of the floor. And it's really difficult to send help to the middle of the floor because that's the easiest, like cutting, kick out passing lanes, right? Like you're often flooding one side of the floor, trying to trap and shift to one side of the floor. When you're in the middle, it's those are the easiest reads to make. So I think we've seen teams progressively try to target Luke in the middle of the floor because especially with Cooper Flagg in his game, I mean, he's money there from that 12 to 18 feet. So all he has to do is make quick rip through move, shoulder check Luke, or back him down a couple times. He could spin either direction, shoot and rise up over him. And thinking about a potential playoff series, Ant could do that to Luke and KD could do that to Luke. So, I mean, that's the downside to Luke potentially being in this role now where he's like almost the de facto point guard or pseudo point guard and him playing 36, 38 minutes a night. Like, I just think there's a real limitation to him defensively that it's really hard to hide. And the Lakers can try to hide it. I mean, you could do pre-switching, scram switching, you could go to zone, but I mean, they had the same issues with Gabe. They're going to have the same issues with Luke. It's just, I think it's a limitation with the current defense that they run. Gary's saying, should AR just go to Europe as well, like Luka? Thank you for the super chat. No, because I think oblique is a little bit different than what. I mean, again, I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a doctor. But I think there's some differences between the two injuries. I think Austin's is more of a one where you just have to like rest and let it heal and recover. Like, of course, Luka's is too, but I think with Luka's, they're going to be doing like treatment on it. They're going to be doing PT. They're going to like Austin's. I think it's more of like a rest and recovery type situation where Luka's, you could attack it with treatment, injections, PT. Like you could take a little bit more of an aggressive approach with Luka's injury compared to Austin. So, I mean, sure, if you, I don't know. I mean, it's like Toradol shots. I don't know what else you could do for Austin's rib oblique situation. That's more of a, I think it's more of like a pain thing to some degree, where it's just very, very painful. But yeah, I don't have enough insight to know what treatment he could possibly get in Europe. Jerry Soriano, your lender for life. Would you sit Jake, cut Maxey, and bring in Bol? No. Well, no to Bol. I was I was processing it all. I think Jake's a rotation guy, especially on this team. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, like we can debate whether he should be the starter, whether Rui should be the starter. Ideally, like one of the two was better on one side of the ball with Jake. I would love for him to be making his threes and playing with a certain level of confidence offensively and not relying as much on like the bully ball and just like foul drawing, which I think is kind of a night tonight. Like tonight, there was a lot of free throws called. There was, or fouls called. There was 69 combined free throw attempts. And that's not necessarily going to be the case every playoff game. So I think there will be nights where Jake is trying to draw that contact or playing through that contact and just not as effective. I also don't think they're going to cut Maxey. He's got a great relationship with both Luka and JJ. I think if they're going to cut anyone, it'd be Kobe Buffkin, who has a team option for next year. So the upside to cutting him would just be that you don't have to pay him next season, whereas Maxey's an impending free agent, so you just have to pay him out the rest of the year. But like Bronny's got a partial guarantee for next year, and I don't see them cutting Maxey. But Bol, I think there are other guys I would bring in above Bol. Craig says get a 10-day injury contract for Austin's injury. I don't know if that's technically possible. I do know that I looked it up. I forget if it was yesterday or the day before, that the Lakers missed the injury exception window. It was back in like, I think mid-January for them to add a player like due to them having potentially season-ending injuries to a couple players. But that deadline was mid-January. So that is gone. Connor Phillips, how's your dog doing, Jovan? He's doing better. He's doing fine right now. So it was a good thing, but like they ran a bunch of tests on him and they didn't find anything. So they were kind of like, we're not sure why this happened because he threw up blood with some blood clots in it. So we were naturally concerned and we called and they said to like rush him to the vet. So we did that. But then they did testing on him and like everything came out normal and fine, which is obviously great. But also we weren't able to identify what the thing was. So we're going to come back in a couple weeks and do some more testing on him and just monitor him for the next few days. He's got to take some medication for the next week. And but yeah, he's doing much better. I appreciate you asking. Pale Fox says that Chris Paul. The Chris Paul thing is interesting to me. Like I for a variety of reasons, right? So he's got the relationship with LeBron, and this year, I thought last year he had some decent to solid bench rotation minutes. To be quite honest, I was a little surprised he didn't end up back in San Antonio because it seemed like that was a very positive situation. But I didn't think he was going to play if he returned to San Antonio. But just him being like, I mean, we've seen some guys of his stature, like future Hall of Fame guys in like the last year of their career, be like a bench warmer on like a good team. And they're just sort of there for their leadership and moral support, mentorship, whatever. I mean, that was kind of what it was supposed to happen with the Clippers. And it went off the rails and seemed like it was untenable between him and Ty Lue. But you have the LeBron relationship. You have the whole Knicks, Chris Paul to the Lakers trade, kind of backdrop to all this. And in theory, the Lakers could use a veteran ball handler, playmaker, at least in like a 10 to 15 minute a night bench role. And of note, he is eligible to play on a playoff team. I think he did. I mean, he technically retired, so I don't know if he officially submitted the paperwork to the league or because then there's a whole process with that. So maybe he left that window open. But to be honest, like I would have very low expectations if they somehow brought him in. I don't think Chris Paul is going to change their season. I also think it adds some complications defensively when you have a 6-foot guard and you also have a guard who's missed the last few months. So you got to wonder what type of shape he's in. And there's a difference between even being in like good shape by like normal standards compared to NBA shape. It's just a different level that I'd be curious to know how much he's actually been working out behind the scenes. But the thought crossed my mind. I saw people tweeting about it. Like but I think it's more of a fun hypothetical than an actual option. And I think he's done. Jesse, thank you for the super chat. Is the treatment in Europe really going to help Luka? Yeah, I think it will. I think it's just a matter of to what degree. Is it a few days? Is it a week? Is it a couple weeks? Like I think there's a spectrum of outcomes here. I also just think in general, the Lakers have to be careful here of rushing Luka back to potentially lose in round 1 or round 2 versus like weighing that versus the long-term health of Luka and the Lakers franchise, or at least like, the next few years of trying to maximize his prime. Like, you just got to be careful. But if he gets the right treatment and he's cleared by, I would hope, like multiple layers here of Lakers, his team, other doctors, like just, multiple layers of doctors clearing him and saying it's okay and there's no risk. Like at that point, it's ultimately on him if he wants to return and take that risk. I just think it's admirable. I like that he's being competitive about it. I like he's being aggressive about it. I like he's being proactive, but I also just think you got to be careful with the hamstring stuff because this is something that if he re-aggravates it again, could then become a recurring thing that he is now dealing with for quite a while that you just don't want to mess with. JC asks, Jovan, do you think the AR injury is more due to him playing more golf? I notice oblique injuries are quite common with golf players, especially since the left oblique and he's a right-handed swinger. I had not thought about that, but that is an interesting question. I'm not sure. But that's a fascinating argument. That's a fascinating hypothesis. And the more I thought about it with the AR situation, like I think the Luka situation is more directly tied to pre-existing injury, plus like both pre-existing in a general sense of it's an injury Luka had almost 2 months prior and had sort of been on and off dealing with, plus like immediately pre-existing in that he re-aggravated it in the first half and just shouldn't have returned. Plus all the minutes and stuff adding up into Luka getting injured. I think it was a combination of both those things. Like he had the history with the hamstring, then he just had a month where the Lakers were playing him consistently 37 plus minutes, basically every night except for a couple of nights. And I think that cumulatively added up and led to his injury. With Austin, it's a little trickier. He had the calf injury earlier and he had been playing a lot of minutes. And I think it's hard to specifically say like, oh, Austin got injured because some trickle down effect from the calf or the minutes. But I do think in general, these things tend to intertwine to some degree. And also just thinking about if you are like, because Austin had been playing with the calf sleeve, a full leg sleeve. If your legs are compromised to some degree, you are going to compensate with other parts of your body. And like I think one of the natural places to compensate with is your core. And so I don't, again, I'm not a sports science person, so I'm more so going off of logic and common sense here. I think there is some correlation to some degree between the workload, the previous calf injury, and just like, I think for stretches over the last couple of months, Austin had looked banged up, and he would have the games where he doesn't have his legs and like he's going through whatever and kind of laboring. But I have a hard time thinking that is completely separate from this oblique injury, right? I just don't. I'm not saying it like I think Luka's there's a more direct correlation and causation with how that played out. Austin's, I think it's a little bit more separate, but I also think like, the reaching back for the rebound and that kind of tweaking it, like, well, if you're fatigued, you might not have the energy. Like, just think about, I mean, we see it sometimes with guys where they will be kind of fatigued and then it's sort of like a reach out and something happens or whatever. And I just think that I just have a hard time dismissing that, like, he's been fatigued and dealing with some lower leg stuff, and that had no correlation to this abdomen injury or oblique injury, technically the same area. Like, there was a freakish element to it of just kind of a bang bang sequence. But I think when you're a little bit more tired or you're favoring one side of your body, that is going to determine how much you can twist or how much you can reach back. And like, I just think if it was related to some degree. Now, I think, again, the Luka one is more direct. Like, Luka ran into the ground and he was dealing with the hamstring thing, and then it just reached a breaking point. With Austin, I think there's multiple things that led to it, but I do think the fatigue was a part of it. I just will not. I don't think it was the main thing necessarily, but I also don't think it didn't play any factor in it. Connor Phillips, OKC is going to start dealing with their own roster construction hurdles in the coming years, and one offseason could change everything. If Rob hits some home runs, will that happen? Who knows? I think that's great. I agree with everything you just said here. I mean, even this year, the crazy thing though with OKC is, like, let's just say they lose Lou Dort. They trade Lou Dort to the Lakers, or they let him, or one of the teams with cap space, and they or they let him walk in free agency. They decline the team option, let him walk. I mean, you just slide in Alex Caruso or Kason Wallace or AJ Mitchell, and you don't really miss a beat. Like it's. I would actually argue, I think all three of those guys are better than Lu Dort. Like it's pretty wild for them. Now they will, like, each summer, each season, it will get progressively harder to keep everybody together. But that's also when the multiple picks come in, and the 13 picks or whatever they have over the next few years. And then you just start to replenish the cupboard. And like, I think the scary thing with them is they are kind of becoming that San Antonio of just like trading up for guys like Kason Wallace in that situation with trading up to get him. And they just have nailed like most of their picks. And they've had a couple misses over the last few years, but they're becoming a team where it's like when they identify someone, it starts to be like, well, what did they see that no one else saw? Or like, you start to be like, well, why couldn't you have identified that? Because I think their scouting department has done an amazing job. And I mean, I think they've put together one of the deepest rosters of all time. I mean, we're talking about like Jared McCain might be their 11th guy, and Jared McCain would be the 6th man for a lot of teams, even going back, I think, in like NBA history. So it's scary, but it will. The dynasty will stop at some point, and we'll see if it even starts. Right, they have to win a second championship, and then they have to win a third championship at some point here over the next couple of years. But from like a roster and asset perspective, they're obviously loaded, and I just think though they could afford to lose Lu Dort and like not really miss that much. MJ notes OKC has starters coming off the bench. Yeah, I mean they have a lot of starters coming off the bench. Bosnian Bear, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Brate, every Lakers starter had more rebounds than Ayton today. He never has a solid game against any team that is considered top. He is always MIA. You can see how useless he is without Luka. The one thing I would note with this is, to be fair, Dallas is not a top team. But to your point, like, I mean, if you want to go back to like the OKC game, he didn't have a good game against OKC, and he's not played well against OKC in any of the three matchups up to this point. I think he's been really disappointing in all three OKC games, and it has looked like the sport is it's moving a little bit too fast for him, and he's not really able to process things, and then he gets sped up a bit, and then he is just not effective. So I think I would say in general, and I was on this earlier in the season, like I would say he has been underwhelming in most of the Lakers' big games. I think during the March stretch, he had the big close to the Denver game. He had the big close to the Houston game. I thought had solid games against New York and Minnesota. So he had a stretch there where he was stepping up in some big games. But prior to that stretch, and I would even say like more recently, he's not been as good in some of those bigger games. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say. Like if there was going to be a situation in which if we're thinking about every current player and their ceiling, like Ayton has the second highest ceiling on the team behind LeBron, but there was very little I saw today that gave me confidence that he's going to get anywhere close to hitting that ceiling. And the inability to attack mismatches consistently, establish position, catch the ball, not be sped up, box out, protect the rim. Like it's just the same things over and over again that continue to be disappointing. I'm Himothy. Hey, Jovan, who are some under the radar free agents you can see developing for the Lakers? Let's pull up the 2026 free agents. We could let's go through it together. I keep forgetting. I apologize for those who enjoy when I share the box score for notable performers. I always have it ready, and then I'm just so locked in that I forget to share it. So I'll at least share the screen right now. Let's go through this. Okay. So 2026 free agents. Let's start with unrestricted guys because these are the guys officially available. We're going to skip through a lot of these names because I don't think a lot of these guys are realistic. Let's go closer to the bottom. Let's maybe work our way up. I know everybody loves Cam Thomas. I'm not there, but maybe he has a realization this summer about what his future role will be in the NBA. Maybe this was all a wake up call. Brandon Williams has stood out to me in a couple of these Dallas games. Jovan Carter has been scrappy with Orlando. You got Goody, who I think could make sense to bring back. Keon Ellis, I would love. And if the Lakers could somehow get him with that exception, the room exception, he's someone I like. Gillespie, I think, is going to make bank this summer. Jock Landale, I think, is a sneaky option for if the Lakers he's someone who I think is above in a minimum. He's above a minimum contract, but not like a non-taxpayer or necessarily double-digit guy. But he's pretty solid, and he'd be someone I would like if the Lakers could add him. Javonte Green, Josh Okogie, depending on I would like him for a minimum. I don't think I'd want to pay him more than that. Bruce Brown, someone I've wanted for years for the Lakers. Gary Payton II. Then we're getting into washed territory. I like Aaron Holiday, Nick Richards, but I think with Jackson, you're probably okay. Dean Wade, depending on the Ayo Dosunmu, is someone I would. I mean, I think Minnesota is going to do everything they can to keep him after losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but he's someone that I would be interested in. Oubre is someone I'd be interested in. Then we get into the Grimes range, and I think all these guys are like Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle for minimums I'd be open to, and then we're getting into guys that I don't think make a lot of sense for the Lakers or maybe out of the Lakers price range. And not technically out of the Lakers price range, but I just think price range for like what they're going to want to pay. Chris Middleton has stood out to me in a couple of the Dallas games as like maybe a bench, more like back end bench guy, but he can still shoot the ball well. But yeah, I mean, I like Mitchell Robinson. I mean, now we're getting into the more expensive guys, so I don't really consider them. So those are some of the unrestricted free agents. In terms of restricted free agents, now remember, these are the guys that it's going to be tough to pry away in most scenarios. I really like Spencer Jones. I wonder if Spencer Jones is a casualty of the whole Peyton Watson situation, and they're already going to have to get off some money, whether it's Christian Brown or Cam Johnson, but maybe Spencer Jones is gettable. Diawara and Post have had some flashes in New York and Golden State respectively, but those would be like more back end of the roster guys that I'd be interested in potentially signing depending on the price. Jamal Shed, potential back end guy. Peyton Watson, you guys know how I feel about him. Kessler, Neek Clifford. I mean, if there's a way to pry him, I would like to pry him. Tari Eason, Mark Williams, Jalen Duren, Mathurin, and yeah, I think those are the primary guys. Player options, well, none of these guys are rejecting these player options other than we start with Austin. DA, we'll see. Horford, depending on if he was a minimum guy, I'd be interested in Horford. Then we get into Alvarado. I like Alvarado. Gary Trent, DeAnthony Melton, Mamu. There's some guys for like the minimum or like a partial amount of the room exception, and then club option guys. I mean, Hartenstein and Lou Dort stand out. Then we get into the Kenrich Williams is a sneaky one if he was a minimum guy. Dayron, if Brooklyn somehow rejected it. Dennis Jenkins, if I mean, Detroit's not rejecting that would be foolish. Dominic Barlow from Philly, Julian Champagny, I think they're going to keep him, and then Mohamed Gay from Toronto would be someone it's just these guys are on such good deals. I don't see why their teams reject it, but if Pelle Larsson became available, I'd be interested in him. Gigi Jackson, but I don't see him. Josh Minot is a guy who could make some sense if he was available. Trenton Watford. I like a lot of these guys, but it's just they're on such good deals that it doesn't really make sense for their incumbent teams to get rid of them. All right, back into the chat here. See, we got a few more super chats. So we're going to wrap with those. Savage, thank you for the super chat. Tuesday's score is going to be wicked. I'm expecting a 60-point blowout, and I pray LeBron just sits because he's too old to be receiving that elderly abuse. I mean this sincerely. I'm genuinely afraid and concerned and intrigued by how the Lakers are going to handle OKC's ball pressure, because Luka and Austin both did not handle the ball pressure well in the two games that they played together. Austin played in one without Luka, and he also did not handle it well in that game. Now we have the context now of Luka was dealing with the hamstring stuff. Unclear at what point it started in the first quarter, and then Austin had hurt his oblique in the first. So I want to give them some grace to some degree they were dealing with some stuff, but if you're out there, you got to judge on the production and the performance, and they did not handle the ball pressure well with their turnovers. And so still taking away Luka and Austin and what OKC did to them to some degree, I mean, they're just at such a different level than Luke and Marcus that and we saw the three possessions where Bronny's trying to bring the ball up against Kayson Wallace. I'm just and they weren't really pressuring Luke. They, as in Dallas, a little bit, but not. They don't have the same level of ball pressure that OKC has. So, especially if Alex Caruso's back, I'm just thinking about Kayson Wallace, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, and AJ Mitchell and Jalen Williams all pressuring and rotating and scrambling. It's just going to be really tough for the Lakers offense. And I'll go out on a limb and say the 36 assists to 12 turnovers, that 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio is not going to materialize in the OKC game. Jeffrey J. Cal, thank you for the super chat. OKC develops new players. Who is the last Lakers coach that attempted to develop young rookie talent? Del Harris with Kobe. AR was second year, right? I would say AR was probably the closest. Remember at the end of the season, he had the 30-point triple-double in Denver, which is one of the craziest games I've ever covered because Frank Vogel got fired at the buzzer. And then I watched him for 10 minutes talk to Lakers PR as they were trying to figure out how to handle the situation. It was pretty insane. But if you go back to AR's rookie year, and I'll share this here. All right, here we go. Looking at AR's rookie year, he played 23 minutes per game, started 19 games, 19 out of 61. And if we go to the game logs, Austin recently talked about this on the Mind the Game pod with LeBron and Steve Nash. He started the season off strong, didn't play in the first game, then had 9 games there between 12 minutes and 27 minutes, then was a DNP for a stretch there, got back into the rotation, and then really around New Year's became a full-time rotation guy. And I actually remember these two games of I was unsure why he didn't play against New Orleans and Denver. He got 2 random DNP CDs late in the season, but that final game against Denver, 31 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists. That was a big moment for him where he showed what he could do as an on-ball shot creator. But I would say Austin is the closest thing to a rookie that the Lakers have relied on. Max Christie had some moments his rookie year. I'd be curious if we look at, he wasn't like a full-time rotation guy, but Max Christie rookie season, 41 games, 12 and a half minutes. So yeah, I mean, half of AR's minutes. If we go to his rookie season, yeah, I mean, he was very inconsistently in the rotation up until mid-December. Lakers had some injuries around then. And then, yeah, I mean, he just did not ever. I mean, Darvin was not the biggest Max guy. So I would say Austin's the last guy that they. I mean, Dalton, I guess you could argue, but then Dalton fell out of favor around the trade deadline after the Knicks trade. Because Dalton played in 78 games and averaged 19 minutes last year. But if we look at Dalton, it was really around, even going into the trade deadline, his minutes had been, because you see in like December, he's 30 minutes, 28 minutes, 28 minutes, 25, 33, 22. And then in the month of December, now we're into to January, he didn't play 20 minutes until the end of the month. And then he had a few games there. But part of that was Lakers won the Grammy trip. AD had gone down, I believe. AD had gone down recently. Oh, no, he went down in the Philly game, actually. But they were a little bit depleted, a little banged up at that point, and then they do the trade. And then from that point on, he had that stretch there from early to mid-March where the Lakers were also a little banged up. Like LeBron went out, Rui missed time, and he had the big game in Brooklyn. He had the big game in Denver, and then he had the Milwaukee game. But then from that point on, he just became a 1 to 2 shift player until played 37 in the final game, 37 minutes in the final game of the season, and then didn't even play 4 minutes in the playoffs. So I would say Dalton and Austin are the two closest guys to this, but your larger point stands that the Lakers have not done a good job of developing rookies or young talent. And final one from Parth. Thank you for the super chat. Is Adebayo a feasible trade target this summer? What would that package look like? You mean Mr. 83? I don't think so. I'm looking up his contract right now because I'm curious if the Lakers could even just like acquire him into their space. So for next year, is actually interesting you say this. He's projected to make $49.5 million next year, and that's an estimate based on the final numbers with the cap. The Lakers could theoretically trade him into their space, similar to what they're hoping to do with Giannis, where they don't even have to give up Austin. So I would say, I mean, you could do the 3 firsts for Bam, 2 or 3 firsts. I think 2 is a little low for a player of Bam's caliber. 3 is probably a fair number, and you already know one of the 3. Like the fear with trading the first, I mean, there's just like the general fear of trading a rookie and what that rookie could be. But when at least one of those picks, is going to be a late first round pick, because again, even if the Lakers drop a little bit here, it's still going to be a mid to high 20s pick. If you're giving up like the 24th pick and then you're hopeful that in the early 2030s, you're still going to have a strong foundation of Luka, Bam, and maybe Austin or someone else, then there's a little bit less risk in it if it's like all late first round picks, although those are still valuable. But yeah, I mean, you could technically offer them or just be like, hey, we're giving you 2 first round picks, but you're just getting off of Bam's contract. You're opening it up, and maybe that actually allows them to, they work some sort of trade out for Giannis with the cap flexibility they have or something like that. I mean, that's really the only way. The other way would be some sort of Austin trade where maybe you're adding, I think you'd have to add at least a first, but maybe it's a first or 2 with Austin and like some sort of sign and trade for Bam. But I think those are really the only 2. Like if I'm Miami, I'm not like, give me Dalton Connect and Jared Vanderbilt and DeAndre Ayton. Like, no, it's either I'm getting just off of Bam's number and I'm clearing the cap sheet and getting more financial flexibility, or I want Austin back in the trade. So I think it'd be one of those two. Miami's tough to read because there's always a lot of smoke with Miami, and then there's just not been a lot of fire lately with them in terms of actual execution of moves, right? And they went after Dame. That ended up not working out, but I mean, it seems like they're still trying to go for it. They're still trying to pursue Giannis. They're still trying to find another star to pair with Bam and Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, etc. So I think they're going to be more buyers than sellers. But if they do have a realization this summer of like, this group just isn't it, and we're in play-in purgatory, maybe they say, hey, like, the Lakers could just take on Bam's contract. And I mean, it's very rare that you have a situation where you could just take on an entire player's contract and don't have to send anything back. And that could be appealing for Miami. That could be appealing for Milwaukee. That could be appealing for OKC. That could be appealing for Orlando. That could be appealing for Cleveland. Like, there's lots of teams that you could just look at the Lakers and like, they're trying to just add talent and depth, and it just be like, all right, we like sneakily don't like this guy's contract and he's a good player, so we'll send him to you. Just send us a pick or two back, and optically we got something out of it other than the cap relief, and call it a day. So I think Bam's on the high side of this scenario, and of course Giannis is too. But I think maybe aiming a little bit lower, there are some guys that could be like I've said, Jalen Suggs maybe in Orlando. I think is someone who, depending on what happens with Orlando, like, does he become maybe available? And I like the Suggs fit next to Austin and Luka. But with all that said, I'm going to wrap here. Appreciate you all for rocking with me for over a couple of hours. First impressions of the Lakers: better than anticipated offensively, worse than anticipated defensively. I think Marcus Smart will help on both ends whenever he returns. The Lakers are still in a solid position to be either the 3 or 4 seed. If I had to rank the outcomes right now, I think 4 is most likely, 3 is second most likely, and 5th is the least likely out of those 3. But certainly 3, 4, 5 are all in play right now. Depends what happens with Denver. They have a couple games. I think it's like Memphis and Portland. Then they play OKC and San Antonio. So if they go 3-1 or 4-0, I think they're locking up number 3. And then I don't know Houston's schedule off the top of my head. I do know they have the Minnesota game, and that's going to be a huge game, even though Minnesota now is pretty close to being locked into 6th. But appreciate you guys. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time with Trevor and Jason for Lakers Collective. We have not spoken about it publicly yet with the Luka and AR injuries, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about tonight's game, and then we're going to talk about LA's postseason outlook. And we've been texting about it, but I don't really know how they feel. I think we're generally in agreement, but interested to see what they say about it tomorrow. And then I will be back potentially tomorrow at some point during the day outside of Lakers Collective. We'll see. If not, for sure Tuesday after Lakers Thunder. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the chat again. Appreciate you guys, and talk to you all very soon.